of U.S. military, Navy SEALs, you name it, banned in the UK. That's be great advertising for the work you do. But what's a good way to start? Because before you know it, they're going to be, you know, teenagers. What is a good way, or for my wife for that matter? You know, because I forget the fact that I took some basic martial arts when I was, you know, in junior high and stuff, and played football and all that, and just a lot of that just comes natural to a guy. What about for women? Because they're the ones that really need it, aren't they? I mean, men need it as well, but what do you say to women out there where the culture says, don't learn how to fight, don't learn how to shoot?
I have a book that I'm working on right now. It'll be coming out next year for women. You know, the title on it is Survive the Unthinkable. And women have been a huge focus of mine. It's extremely difficult to get women by themselves to come in seeking self-defense training because, of course, they've always been taught bigger, faster, stronger, nothing you can do, talk your way out of it, don't get them angry. In fact, I had a woman come up to me in Sydney one time. I was doing a big presentation down in Australia for a large group, and she came up to me after the presentation, and she said to me, she said, you know, I've taken 3 self-defense classes, and the only thing I ever remembered was don't kick a man in the groin because it might anger him. And she said, that's it. She goes, I've been living, you know, fearfully about this. She said, the way you laid things out and explained it, I now understand that I'm capable of protecting myself. And there's a huge difference, Alex, when you look at women. You know, it's rare that I'll train a boy younger than 18. It's rare. If a parent okays it, I'll do it. And the reason is we as males live with inter-male aggression, you know, this locker room back and forth. And, you know, you want most boys to navigate high school without this information because they don't have the proper filters oftentimes to deal with this. Whereas girls, the only time they experience violence is when it's the real thing. Women don't have that locker room aggression where, you know, hey, you and I will knock each other around to see who's the badass and you know, I own the locker room and you take your social status and all that stuff. You know, that's the inter-male aggression stuff. That's not violence. Whereas women, they experience the real thing. And the cool thing about training women is there's no ego involved. Women are, if you teach them technique, they absolutely do it that way. They don't try to muscle anything. They rapidly outpace the males in their ability to do this correctly. And the analogy that gets through to most women is when they think that they're completely powerless against a bigger, stronger guy, is I asked them, I said, hey, when was the last time you held a small infant? You know, currently I have a 20-month-old. And if I have that little guy and I'm holding him up, he'll throw his head back, hit me in the nose, poke me in the eye. And, you know, I am, you know, basically, you know, mildly injured and out of it for a little bit of time. And what I say is, you know, remember how that felt. Now you
look at a child throwing a fit. You know what? Can we do 5 more minutes to finish up on this?
Yeah.
All right, 1 minute break and be back in 1 minute to finish up because this hour is over and then a big news blitz coming up. We'll come back and break that down. Absolutely. Women, if you're going to get attacked anyways, you might as well be able to fight back. I mean, does that mean you're going to be able to beat Mike Tyson? I don't know. You get women mad. It's something else. The point is, absolutely, we need to get women to know how to fight. Self-defense expert Tim Larken's with us, final segment. My point is that your children grow up so fast, before you know it, you know they're going to be out there, you know, alone, and it's just the roles are so ingrained to not have women know how to defend themselves that even, you know, I'm a guy pro-Second Amendment, you know, liberty, constitutionalist, and I'm not really teaching my daughters that stuff. It's just instinctive. Well, you know, a male is interested in that. My son wants to know about that. He's into that because that's what males do. But then you see the so-called feminists. They're always about women, you know, basically just henpecking at men and just some political power. I'm talking about Gloria Steinem and stuff. Finishing up with what you were saying about a baby and how hard they are to control, Tim.
Yeah, well, you know, the problem is, you know, when you talk about, you know, a woman going against Mike Tyson, that's the problem. That's what they see. Whereas, you know, I was, you know, 10 years ago, my son, my older son, oh gosh, it was longer. I hate to admit I'm that old, but it was actually 13 years ago. My son, little 4-year-old, came over and I think he was going to try to give dad a hug. He trips over his little feet and his little hands come up, slap me in the groin. And I swear, Alex, I'm on the ground for 5 minutes, just sucking my thumb, completely helpless, you know, at that point. Now, that's what predators give you the opportunity to do. I felt no, you know, my son, obviously, we know if we put myself and a 4-year-old in the ring and we all knew what was going on, we know how that would end up. But predators, the reason they seek you out is because they don't think you're an issue. And oftentimes they will put vulnerable parts of their body close to you and give you an opportunity to do that one injury that we're talking about that can change everything in your favor. And if a small child can do it to a fully grown adult, use a fully grown adult, even if you weigh 95 pounds, who wants to feel 95 pounds going through one part of a vulnerable part?
Well, exactly. I mean, have you ever tried to like take your cat to the vet and it doesn't want to go in the cage and It'll tear you up? I mean, resistance is victory. Bottom line, you teach folks the most effective ways to resist.
Absolutely. And clearly defined, twofold. You get two things. You understand all the things. You know, my clients tell me two things. They go, boy, I've really modified my behavior because you've really taught me all the things I was taking chances with over the years that I no longer participate in. But I also immediately recognize those rare times where, hey, you know what? I would have to do violence here. I have to protect myself, and I completely switch into that mode. That's the greatest gift you could ever, if you're a parent. It's that type of understanding that you give your kids, you know, prior to life, because it's one of those 800-pound gorillas that's in the room. Nobody wants to talk about, you know, a physical threat to you, but it's something that we're all worried about. I asked most parents this. I go, how many people have taught your kids how to swim? And they all, you know, raise their hands. Well, why did you do that? Well, because I don't want them to drown. I go, oh, you don't? I thought it was because you all want them to become Olympic swimmers. And they go, no. You don't want them to drown. I go, same reason you want to teach people how the human body responds to trauma. Not because you want them to be a world-class MMA artist or martial artist or anything. It's because you want them to.
Chances are they're going to get mugged. They're going to get attacked. And they need to have that skill. Good people need to stop being domesticated. In closing, just in my experiences in life, I've learned how serious fights can be. I've just gotten to the point, because you run into it, somebody tailgates you, cuts you off, gets in my face. I just have learned to be satisfied and walk away, and you know, usually people back off. I mean, what do you do if somebody gets in your face for no reason and says, hey, I'll kick your butt, buddy? What do you do? Just turn and walk away, or what do you do?
Alex, I'll give you the perfect example. I went to pick up my son when he was about, my older son, when he was about 10 years old. I was going to drop him off at a park with his grandfather, and I was in San Diego about to give a seminar. And I come out from where my son was, picking my son up. We pull out. Guy comes by. He claims that I ran him off the road. He looks at me. He starts yelling in the car, flipping me off. My son's looking at me like, Dad, what's this all about?
I tell you what, I know you. Listen, I'm not trying to keep you on here more, but we got to come back, finish this story, and then we'll let you go. I got to hear this. What a cliffhanger. That's a short segment. Tim Larken's our guest. TargetFocusTraining.com. For a long time. You know, there's not just guns to protect you and your family. There's also your mind and using your body or anything around you to defend yourself. Tim Larken is about to leave us. I appreciate him staying a little bit in the second hour, or the third hour, because we ran out of time. He was starting to tell a story about, you know, how his classes are, mainly about ways to not have that confrontation, but then what to do if there's no way out of it, and that force continuum there. But I was describing, because I see it more and more, and it's not just me saying this, the crime statistics show it. I see it everywhere. I drove back from the Texas coast, from Port Aransas back to Austin yesterday, left about 5 o'clock, got home by dark, and I've never seen so much road rage. People in the slow lane pulling up behind you, pulling up behind other people, flipping each other off. I see men bowing up to each other constantly as the economy falls apart. There's a lot of stress. And then men want to feel like they're successful because of, I guess, the male prowess. If I had to psychologically analyze it, psychoanalyze it, you see that with the police taking roids, and you've got the media hyping all these threats and all this fear. I mean, I'm just trying to analyze it. For whatever reason, I'm seeing, I guess, the MMA culture, whatever, and I'm not even saying that's a bad thing overall, people wanting to go out and have some rite of passage. Maybe they didn't have it in high school or college, I don't know. But a lot of times I find it's older, like middle-aged guys who actually haven't been in a lot of fights. Once I, look into who they are later in some of the cases I see in the newspaper and people I know, I mean, maybe I'm just grabbing at straws here. For whatever reason, finishing up with that question here with our guest of TargetFocusTraining.com, self-defense expert Tim Larken, who trains Navy SEALs, you name it. Tim, are you seeing more fights on the streets and things, not just in England, but also here in the U.S.? A, why? And then B, finish the story you started before the break, where I was asking you, what do you do when you go down to the bar district to eat at a nice restaurant and some guy for no reason goes, "What you looking at, punk?" And you're not even looking at him. And you're like, nothing. And they think, just because you're clean cut, that you'll back off, and it's like some little counting coup for them and their buddies. And then you give them what they want, and you say, "I don't see anything, mister," and walk away. So then they say something else and start walking towards you. What do you do when just everything in you wants to turn around and punch them right in the throat? What do you do at that point?
Well, that's the challenge, and that's really what I do. I guess, to illustrate, the reason. I'll tell you where I changed tactics. I wasn't always this way. In my 20s, I was doing a lot of work with the military, doing a lot of really fun stuff, and I thought I was invulnerable. And I made a huge mistake in the idea that I had been working down in South America, and I came back up to San Diego, and I was hanging out with my friends, and we're having a great time, and I'm driving. Guy, again, we're talking bumper-to-bumper traffic, and some guy thinks I cut in front of him. It was absolutely asinine. Guy gets in front of me. Well, he's raging. He's getting, he's behind me, and he's getting all just worked up, and I'm a couple cars up. And of course, being a young guy and being, hey, I just got out of the jungles down here. What threat is San Diego? I start like blowing kisses in the mirror behind so he can see me, because I just know it's gonna get him. My friends are laughing. Well, this guy, over the period of like about 5 minutes, is able to work through traffic to get ahead of me a couple of cars, hits his brakes, gets out of the car. And I'm like, oh, great. So I get out of the car, and I'm going to go, I'm going to go get him, right? I get out of the car. I hear from the back, my buddy yells, "Gun." And I go, oh, and I hit the deck. And sure enough, had that guy had a gun, it would have been a clear shot at me, right? And I'm sitting there going, oh, man, that was stupid. Then I look, the guy doesn't have a gun. He has one of those clubs, the thing that locks your steering wheel. And so that to me wasn't a big deal. And I yelled something at my buddy for being an idiot. And I charged this guy. Guy tries to hit me. I grab him by the throat, throw him down the back of his car, throw him right down the back of his car, just about to put him out, right? Gonna get that justification for the idiot. My ego's feeling really great. And what do I see? I see a little 3-year-old girl, face pressed up against the glass, crying, "Please don't hurt daddy." Today, that image stuck in my head so many times, so that when the incident that I was telling you about, my son, and I driving, and this guy just doing all the road rage stuff. He must have had a bad day. Maybe he's in an office cubicle, and he just decided, I look like an easy guy to go off on, because, he was making fun of the fact that I seemed to be in good shape, all this other. He's trying to push every button on me. And I just told him, hey, have a good day, and let him go. Dropped my son off, and then went to give my seminar. Now, the funny part about it was that week was the week that I came out on the cover of Black Belt magazine, as being, a self-defense instructor. And my son was just kind of, laughing to himself, going, "Dad, does this guy?" And I said, "Hey, Connor," I said, "it makes no difference." I said, just because I have my training doesn't prevent me from being protected from violence.
But the discipline of not using violence unless you absolutely have to, wasn't it satisfying when you did the right thing? Because I know that whenever I do the right thing now, it's very satisfying.
Alex, I tell everybody, I go, whatever action, if you're going to put your hands on somebody, you have to think, and you can't do this stuff in the heat of the moment. You have to sit down, cup of coffee by yourself, and think about this kind of stuff. And you have to ask yourself, does that action that I'm thinking of doing, to satisfy my ego on the road rage and be the alpha in the road rage, and is it going to pass the 3-day test? Meaning, when I do this action, and if it ends up, now that I know I'm educated about violence, and I realize once I put my hands on this individual, either he or I could end up seriously injured or killed. Is that going to pass the 3-day test? 3 days from now, when I'm thinking about this incident, will I still sit there and say, yes, that was worth it? Very, very, very few situations meet that.
Well, in closing, I'll tell you why the UK banned you, because I've seen this as part of a pattern. They want the monopoly of power. They're under that UN treaty where they believe the state has the monopoly on power.